Hello, hello. Welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses. It's yet another show with myself, Hockey Jerk, and Kevin Lacey. We're going to kick some butt, take some names. The season's over, but that means the season's just begun. And so here we are. First up is Mr. Hockey Jerk. Mr. Hockey Jerk, how are you doing today? We haven't seen you in a while, I feel like.
Yeah, I've been working the phones, sending the tweets, doing some due diligence, and I am pleased to inform you that what is it that Zach always said? Rumors of my demise were greatly exaggerated. So
Something like that.
Yeah, I'm rolling with it.
Rolling with it. And also with us tonight on the show is Mr. Kevin Lacey. Kevin Lacey, it's good to have you on.
Man, who are you kidding? We can never see Hockey Jerk anyway. All we get is that nice little avatar and whatnot. But I'm one to talk because I'm under the weather tonight, guys, and I'm just not up for being behind the camera. So you get my professionally taken avatar. But I do have one request. Since Hockey Jerk said that he is working the phones and whatnot, I would like for the rest of the show for you to switch to a graphic of a draft table in preparation of our next episode, which will be the draft special.
If Google Hangouts wasn't causing so much problems, I would absolutely do that. But I'm worried if I back out, change the avatar back, and come back in, I'm worried that my computer would explode or something.
I didn't even think of that you'd have to do that. And trust me, folks, like the fact that all three of us can hear all three of us, that's like a once in a lifetime opportunity with Google Hangouts these days. So,
yeah, which is apparently going away. So it'll be interesting to see what they replace it with. And gosh, I'm concerned, but those are problems for the summer.
Yeah, we're going to move on to bigger and better things. So stay tuned to Teal Tinted Glasses on the @Teal Tinted Pod Twitter account.
Absolutely. All right. So obviously, the Stanley Cup has been won in thus bringing the season to an end. And then it also begins because now you're at buyouts. We're going to talk draft coming up. Obviously, all these things are going to happen. Free agency. So it ends and starts all at the same time. The Blues won the Stanley Cup. I guess some quick thoughts on it. I'll start with you, Jerk.
Well, I was going into this Stanley Cup final, not finals. I was I was not very excited just because St. Louis and Boston are the two teams in the West, in the West and in the East respectively, that I like the least. So I was really just not happy to watch 4 to 7 games of this, but it actually ended up being fun to watch. It was back and forth pretty much all the way through. You had, the depth for both teams was on fire. And I think too, the big thing for me, and I think Kevin might agree with this as well, is for somebody who had, a lot of haters and a lot of doubters, I think Ryan O'Reilly, came to play, especially in this series, and proved a lot of people wrong.
It's funny that you mentioned Ryan O'Reilly, because I think at one point during the season, I was like, I remember making fun of Ryan O'Reilly, and it wasn't just, although sometimes it's, sometimes you can say things in jest and then people remember them and you can pretend you're really smart later. But I remember early in the season being like, is Ryan O'Reilly the problem? Because every team he goes to is in the basement.
But I've said the same thing about Dougie Hamilton. Like every team underachieves that he's on. Although this year with Carolina, I'm getting off topic, but they finally pushed through. But Dougie Hamilton almost got traded at the trade deadline anyway, despite that. But yeah, Ian, with Ryan O'Reilly, I thought that was justified. Last offseason we heard about him losing his smile and whatnot, and thankfully, and I've been watching reruns of Teal Tinted Glasses lately on our YouTube channel, and thankfully in the offseason on not one but 2 different episodes, all 3 of us said it would be nice to see the Sharks get Ryan O'Reilly despite that long history of, well, I won't say long history because he did well in Colorado, but recent history of failure. Mm-hmm. And even the start of the year with him, it just wasn't going right. And then now here he is, Conn Smythe Trophy winner. And to me, I thought there was no other choice but Ryan O'Reilly. Like, I thought this was the first time in 5 years that it was clear cut, no doubt about it. I mean, Jordan Binnington, great run and all that, but to me, Jordan Binnington won Game 7 for them. Ryan O'Reilly won 4 series for them.
Yeah, I think the only person that I would even consider for the Conn Smythe and Boston would have had to win would be Tuukka Rask, because I don't think his save percentage dropped below 9 at all.
Yeah, he was great.
He was outstanding for a guy who takes just a ton of crap. Is, in my opinion, a really good goalie. I think my thoughts, like, I'm not gonna lie, I really checked out, and it's the first time I've really checked out in the final. And I don't really know why. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the teams going in, kind of like what Jerk said, but if I can't have my team in, I want a story, right? Like, give me a good story to follow. And I thought, I like, as much as I know that we're not happy with the Blues, and I think, would we be happy with any team representing the West after playing the Sharks? Probably not. We'd have anger against any team. I think any of the other 15 teams in the West, I'm sure would have had a gripe with them being in the Cup final. But I mean, the story that St. Louis, I mean, the way they, in the calendar year, they go from last in the league to Stanley Cup champions. I mean, that's a pretty compelling story for me. So I guess from that perspective, I like it because of the story. And I do hate the Bruins, but all in all, I was kind of checked out. I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't know if I was just fatigued by the whole thing. I think after the Sharks kind of having a long run and the way it ended, I sometimes I just get angry and I check out. And I think that was the case this year.
I feel like I would have been okay. The only team I would have been okay with representing the West, if it wasn't the San Jose Sharks, would be Colorado. I don't feel like I really had any issues with them this spring, even in the games against us. Like, they were pretty interesting to watch, at least for me. Like, if they would have beat the Sharks and moved on, I feel like I would have been okay with that.
I feel like we will get plenty of opportunity to hate Colorado, watching them year after year get to the Western Conference Finals and Finals, that I'm okay with them not making it this far, because their time will come.
Yeah, I agree.
But for me, guys, I'm the same thing. I didn't care. I think I was looking for an excuse to finally get to the off season. Like, I honestly had already started my draft preparation about a month ago and whatnot. And for me, watching the Calder Cup finals, that was really what I wanted to see at that point. I guess I had more of a vested interest because Charlotte and Chicago was my preseason prediction of a Calder Cup final, with Charlotte winning, and it all came to fruition. So once that happened, I was like, cool, summertime. Oh yeah, there's the Stanley Cup final still, but whatever, summertime. Yeah, Game 7, whatever. Good for you, Blues. I'm happy for Kurt Price and Let's Go Blues Radio, though. I do want to give those guys a shout.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, those guys are awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations to those guys. Look, I feel like in a lot of series, I just feel like with the way just how acrimonious social media has become, I mean, I don't think you're going to exit any series and be like, oh, they're okay, they can move on. Like, I'm happy for some people and I'm less happy for others, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I mean, I completely checked out. I was like, I didn't really want to sit down for a while to do this. I needed a break from this. And it wasn't like I jumped on the Raptors bandwagon. I really didn't care. I just wanted that series to end, so I'd stop getting absolutely annihilated at work after the watch parties. So I wanted that series to end quickly. But I just I wasn't like I just jumped into something else. I think I was like, I just needed a break. And here I am, all back, ready, charged up again. So obviously there's a lot of stuff swirling around the Sharks right now, and I want to start obviously here because we are, we do talk a lot of NHL, but we're also, we know our audience is Sharks fans, and obviously I'm sure they want to hear about our thoughts on all the swirling rumors. And that's the one thing here is, obviously I've got to make sure that we're pointing out we're talking about rumors. We don't have much substantiated. We're speculating just like everyone else. So please don't yell at me on Twitter and say, what do you guys know? You guys don't know anything, because you're right. I don't. I'm basically reading the news like you guys are and speculating. Here we are. So speculation warning out of the way. Let's get this started. There's a couple players that are, that are likely to, well, one's likely, one has been said he might. Donskoy says he's going to test the open market. Jerk, I'm sure you're just like, whatever.
Well, I'm going back and forth with this because really, last year and this year in the regular season, in my opinion, Donskoy didn't really, offer a whole lot to be excited about. But then, he finally gets in some games in the playoffs this year, and I'm like, where the hell has this guy been all this time? Like especially in the series against the Blues, he's making things happen. He's hard on the forecheck. They're not going in for him, but he's helping create scoring chances, and he's, cleaned up some of the issues that I identified during the regular season. I'm just like, damn, like now we're gonna let him go, and he actually showed flashes of brilliance, probably when it was too late. So it's tough. I mean, I don't see a way where the Sharks can justifiably bring him back when there's, there's been now 2+ seasons of not so great play. I mean, great if you're looking for like a fourth line black ace kind of thing, but the expectations for Donskoy were obviously way higher and they weren't met, and that's fine, it happens. But the Panthers are going to enjoy their third line right winger. So
Kevin, what's your thoughts on Donskoy?
For me, Jonas Donskoy, it's hard for me because this is a guy that year after year we look at him in training camp and we go, oh man, he's taken a huge step forward. Yeah. And as the seasons progress, he seems to fall by the wayside and then picks it back up in the playoffs, which is really when it matters. But I don't know if there's enough there for me to be worried about him walking. For me, it's a matter of just having the bodies. Like, who is going to replace Jonas Donskoy? I don't know if we have someone who can right now. Now, a year from now, I'd probably be like, if Donskoy didn't progress, I'd probably be like, we're fine because the Barracuda have some guys who are ready to move up and whatnot. I don't know if the Sharks are there yet. So the Sharks might have to go out of the organization to fill a guy like Jonas Donskoy's role if he doesn't come back. Right. My buddy Ryan has, for 2 years, I've said it on the show before, that for 2 years he thinks Donskoy's biggest problem is his stick is too long. And I know there have been times where, especially the second half of the season, where it did seem like he was out dangling himself with that long reach. Right. And so I expect to see him, whatever team he winds up with, I expect to see him physically stronger and whatnot, but is that going to matter in December? Like, is he going to fall off again?
I really like Jonas Donskoy. Well, I liked him. My love for him has waned a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But I mean, I remember the first season we had him, and I was really impressed by him. I just, I think, again, like Jerk brought up in the St. Louis series, you kind of started to see the attributes that really made you kind of drawn to him. That endless engine that he can have sometimes, where he's just a tenacious forechecker, and he makes stuff happen. But we haven't seen that nearly enough. And my concern with Jonas Donskoy isn't so much as Jonas Donskoy coming back, but I mean, obviously, as we continue, we're going to talk about the salary cap, which is going to be a very interesting conversation all summer for the Sharks. And this is a guy that makes what, $2 million already. He is he going to take it? Is he going to take a significant haircut to stay with the Sharks? I don't think so. And he'd have to. I mean, the only way I'd be really happy with Donskoy staying is A, if he plays at a diminished role, and B, he makes money that matches that diminished role. And I don't think that would happen. So, in that respect, it's like, yeah, okay, happy trails. If you can find a better deal somewhere else, great. But it goes back to who do you replace him with? And I don't know if the Sharks have that. It's frustrating, because like this season, when we came into this season, we were kind of all pretty high on the depth. And I think we could agree that, by the time it was all said and done, the depth really let the Sharks down by the end of the season. And so I'm a little nervous, like Kevin said, who is there a guy to step up and take that spot if Donskoy leaves, or are we signing, the bottom basement, fourth liner for $1 million?
Who is got to be really salivating at this opportunity is a guy like Lucas Radil, who is 29, I believe, years old now.
Mm-hmm.
And or he will be 29 going in next season. And I believe he's at RFA right now, or is he under contract one more year, or is he a free agent as well?
He's got one more year.
One more year, yeah.
And then the following year he'll be unrestricted.
So it's perfect for a guy like him, because now he has a chance to really solidify himself as an NHLer in this 1 year remaining on his deal. And Jonas Donskoy out of the picture just helps with that even more. I'm looking at the Sharks depth chart right now, and I mean, Sorensen and Meyer, you can pretty much flip on both sides, left or right wing. But from a purely right wing standpoint, you're looking at Kevin Labanc and Melker Karlsson as the only two right wings on the roster. So without Donskoy. So definitely some spots to be won, to be had, or to be filled with signings.
Absolutely. Joe Pavelski is another name that's been speculation. I don't want to. How do you mean Joe Pavelski would never leave San Jose? Okay, it's speculation. Speculating that he might test the open market. I've always had the unpopular opinion on Pavelski that this is when you walk away from him. Like, I think the Sharks would make a huge mistake, especially if they look at term. Maybe if it's a short deal, then I don't really care. But I have a bad feeling like this is Joe Pavelski's looking for that last big payday, and I just. Man, with everything else going on, there's a lot of tear on that body. There's a lot of mileage on that body, and it makes me very nervous. The Sharks, going long term there.
So what you're telling me is that you do not have Joe Pavelski and his new 6x7 contract penciled in for next year.
Dear God, no.
I share a lot of the sentiment you have. Obviously, there is a lot of tear on that body. He had 2 concussions, in the playoffs.
Right.
Obviously, against the Las Vegas Knights as well as against the Blues. But this is also a guy, 35 years old. Was never really a fast skater to begin with. And to his credit, he appears to be getting faster, or at least staying constant the older he gets. So maybe that's a bargaining chip for him. But the NHL is moving, to be a faster league. It has been for the last 5 or 7 years. And, Pavelski's never really been a fast guy, so he's already kind of at a disadvantage in that respect. But I think you're right. I mean, I think if you go any longer than 2 years, same thing with Patrick Marleau and the Toronto Leafs, where you're looking at that 3rd year and it's like, whoa, what are we doing here? And then you're stuck, especially if the salary cap doesn't rise as high as people think it will over the next 3 to 5 years.
Do you guys think that a hometown discount for Joe Pavelski isn't necessarily in terms of salary, but in terms of contract term? Like, would the hometown discount be a 2-year deal instead of a 4-year deal that he probably could get on the open market? Because for me, what you guys said, Joe Pavelski will be 35 going into next year. I love the guy. He's my guy. He's the captain of the team. He put up 38 goals, which is not easily replaceable. But again, with the age and his foot speed and whatnot, I mean, look at Paul Martin. Paul Martin was great the first 2 years, but then after that, he fell off. Joel Ward was great the first 2 years, and then he fell off. And I do agree with you, Hockey Jerk, that I think Pavelski's got 2 solid years, but if you give him more than that, then a year 3, year 4 becomes a burden. So my question, again, is do you guys think they could sign him to a 2-year deal based on the so-called hometown discount?
I could see it. In my cap friendly armchair GM, I did have him penciled in at 2x7. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm looking. Obviously, I mean, to your point, Kevin, you can't say, oh, you're old and you're slow, so take $3 million. Like, no, you're right. 38 goals, you don't replace that kind of production.
No, you can't.
And I fully expect Pavelski, should he come back to the Sharks, or even if he signs anywhere else, I fully expect him to flirt with 30. And you can't afford to lose. I mean, well, you can, but I mean, that kind of consistency is very hard to come by.
Right. No, and that's the thing, right? Like, I agree. Like, and it's not like I don't like Joe Pavelski. I love Joe Pavelski. Let's make this super, super clear. It's just when I look at this team's salary cap structure going forward, anything longer than 2 years, man. I mean, oof, it's so scary when you consider some of the other stuff going on. Like, what? Not only, okay, so you're right, who replaces Joe Pavelski's goal, but if other things happen and the Sharks are like right up against the cap, it's the same problem. It's like, well, okay, well, now who has to leave, and then who replaces those guys that have to leave, so that you can have a $7 million Joe Pavelski? Because I don't think he comes in a dollar under $7.
No, not at all.
Right? Like, at this point, especially, with the, again, who knows? Again, speculation, but there's rumors that he really wasn't too thrilled with the amount of money that Evander Kane got.
Well, so that was 7 or 7.5 that Kane got.
Kane got 7 times 7.
Yeah.
So I think that the number for Joe Pavelski starts at 7, and it's just a matter of term at that point. If you can give me Joe Pavelski $7 million for 2, I'm with you guys. I can deal with that. I'm totally fine. Like, I don't want to say I'm totally fine with it, but I get it. I get that he's earned that money, and that's the way the league works. But anything over 2 years, I hate it.
And also too, what I was going by earlier, like I said, in the playoffs he had 2 concussions, and obviously that's not including when he got popped in the mouth with the puck either. So you have 2, potentially 3 head issues, head injuries within a short amount of time. And I don't want to thoughts become things, but I don't don't want to put any of that out there. But I mean, you look at a guy like Roche Chartier, how many concussions has he had since 2017? And I honestly think his career might be over because of it.
I think it is over for Chartier.
And you worry, like, obviously, to my knowledge, Pavelski hasn't had a major injury prior to, obviously when he broke his wrist last season. So you think that maybe there's not that much wear on the body in terms of injury, but at the same time, 2 for sure concussions, and then a third that could potentially be a minor one, so close. You obviously have to worry about the long-term health as well. And this may kind of sound like selfish, but say you go that 3rd year, that 4th year, and what if something happens and now the Sharks are
that's a 35, that's going to be a 35 plus contract.
Yeah,
right.
Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the problem, right? If this wasn't a 35 plus contract, maybe I'm less concerned with the term, right? Because if you sign up before he's 35, then if you have to buy it out, it isn't as brutal. Or if he retires early, whatever, although no one really retires, they just LTIR until they're done.
Right.
But you're not stuck with that cap hit should he retire. Not that I think Joe Pavelski is going to retire in the next couple of years. But there's obviously inherently less risk there. But with a 35 plus contract, I mean, that's where the term really bothers me, because unless you can LTIR it out, but again, guy has to be injured to LTIR it out.
And then get traded to Arizona.
So if you end up, if this deal looks terrible in the 3rd year, and you're talking about a buyout at 7, like, you're already going to be in cap hell. Yep. And that's just going to add to it. I mean, that's the things that you unfortunately, I love Joe Pavelski, but at the same time, you have to kind of take the jersey off, and then put the business hat on and be like, okay, from a business perspective, does this make sense? And to me, anything longer than 2 doesn't. And if he wants more than 2 years, then I hope he tests the open market. And I hate that I have to say that, but I think from the long-term view of the team, you hope that, a guy like a Timo Meier can, in 2 years, can replace that production, which I totally think he can.
do you guys think that Pavelski could get boy, we're on Pavelski for a while, but I think this is an important topic to talk about.
It's a huge topic.
Do you guys think that they could front load him to where he got 4 years, but gets 7.5 for 2 years and 5 for 2 years? Do you think that, would you be more comfortable in that, or would you still walk away?
I'd still walk.
I mean, I have to agree with Ian just because I see where you're going, and most likely at that point in time, a team would take that on, but you never know if that will happen. And I think too, with where the NHL is going, you're starting to see more teams are being in the hunt for a playoff spot for longer. And so the amount of teams who are hypothetically willing to take on a contract to act as dead space, I think that's there's a lot less teams who are willing to do that. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I feel like this is one of the most uncertain off seasons that the Sharks have had in a while.
And here's actually, just thinking of it right now, here's another reason why I would be okay with a 3-year deal for Pavelski.
Mm-hmm.
Will there be a 2020-2021 season? Because that second year may not even happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see it become a 3-year deal just because of the fact that there might not be a second year. There might be years 1 and 3.
There might be.
The league, the last I heard about any league bargaining between the PA and the league was a year ago.
Right.
So
I'm just holding out hope that there's a half lockout and we get compliance buyouts and
exactly.
It's gonna be great. You're absolutely right, Kevin. And that's what I'm like. Even beyond the Sharks, like there's so much uncertainty. Like, there could be a lockout in 2021. To your point, but let's say both sides are like, we can do the 2-year extension, right? And then we get to 22-23, and all of a sudden things aren't totally kosher. And I mean, obviously, I don't think Pavelski would factor into that, but still, it's like, where we go from there. And I literally, you hear things on the opposite side of the spectrum. Like I've heard that compliance buyouts might be a thing again, but then I've also heard that in the next 3 to 5 years, the league wants the salary cap to be at 100 million. So I really don't know where we're going right now. I mean, if it's 100 million, then hey, sign everyone, and bring them back, and it's all great.
Ilya Brizgalov's like, I can come back to the league, pay me 23 years worth of salary.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, like I don't want to get too. I do want to touch on lockout later though, because I think that there's a couple of things that lead me to believe that teams are obviously preparing for it. But yeah, I guess if with the potential of lockout, maybe the 3rd year wouldn't be such a terrible thing. I don't like anything more than 2. Like I'm pretty set on that just because of the age factor. And I think after you get your 2-year deal, you cash in, and then you go, if you want to stay, you take it year to year, just like Joe Thornton has done.
I mean, if he loves San Jose so much, right?
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So let's move on from Pavelski, because obviously I think this is something that we're going to discuss probably a lot this summer, depending on when the number comes in or what happens. I'm sure we're definitely going to, hear things. We don't really have anything on Joe Thornton at this point, unless I missed something. Joe Thornton's still mowing his lawn, maybe has a contract on his lawnmower. I'm not sure. Waiting to sign. I think that Joe Thornton's probably going to wait to see what the fallout is from the rest of the, what the rest of the contracts come in at. And then Joe Thornton will probably make a choice from there, similar to what he's done in years past. So I'm not really concerned. Like if Joe Thornton wants to come back for another year, I think my concerns would be a lot more alleviated than they were this year. This year coming in, I was like, oh God, here we go. Another year of Joe Thornton, first line center. This is going to be terrible. And, but
the thing was, that's how the year started out.
It did start out terrible, but it adjusted. Things actually got fixed to the point, like he took a diminished role. Now, not completely, because obviously he's still going to chew up a bunch of special teams time. But, I thought Joe Thornton looked fine on the 3rd line. So, if he comes back if he comes back and he's the 3rd line center again, I really don't have an issue with that, regardless of money, because whatever, it's 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, you just, I mean, the what is it? The truth is in the pudding. You look at Joe Thornton. I mean, even this year, like you said, diminished role, and both of his legs are artificially. Like I was talking with a friend, and I said they should just give Joe Thornton like an Iron Man suit, honestly. But even in his diminished role, I mean, he still put up 51 points. That's pretty damn good for a 39-year-old whose quote unquote career is over and he's broken and this, that, and the other. So I think you take that gamble every day. If he says he's good, sign it, send it, put it on the lawnmower, and let's go.
Exactly. Kevin, anything on Joe?
It's funny because every year I say, get rid of Joe Thornton. I think I've been saying this since like 2011 or something. It's time to move on. It's time to move on. I still think it is time for him to just hang him up, but I won't be upset if he comes back for one more year, as long as the price is right. I thought that he played very well this year. I worry that the reason Thornton was so great in the playoffs is because he gave it everything he had left. So I hope he's still got something left in the tank if he does want to play one more year. But other than that, we'll see. Well, there's going to be a lot of we'll sees. That's the first we'll see. It's going to become the Teal Tinted Glasses drinking game for the next 3 weeks between tonight, the draft of we'll see whether this third rounder pans out or not. Hint, Sharks third rounders never pan out, people. But anyway.
Thomas Gray,
and also
free agency. We'll see.
and also, too, something that I think falls by the wayside a little bit, too, is it's been more or less confirmed that when Joe Thornton's done in the NHL, he wants to play at least one more year in Davos. And so, to your point, Kevin, if you let's say he's done.
Wait, is that really a thing?
Yeah, I remember it was a thing. I remember it was a thing like during the year the Sharks went to the final and everybody freaked out. But yeah, like from what I understand, like once he's done in the NHL, he wants to play a year in Davos. Just honestly, I think just for the hell of it. Like he would probably just show up and play home games for free. But so I'm wondering, like, even if he is, like he could give it all in the NHL, but like if he still wants to play in Davos for a year, are we like we'll really never know when he's done with the NHL.
Yeah, I actually think that's pretty cool. And we did actually see that with Curtis Brown, who played 2 more years in Cloton in Switzerland, and Kevin Klein retired from the NHL early to play a couple years in Switzerland for ZSA, and he just retired. So if Thornton wants to do that, I think that's pretty cool.
Like with Joe Thornton, for me, if he retires, I'm cool with that. Like, great career, first ballot Hall of Famer in my book, the 101st best player ever to play the game. It doesn't really, for me, like Joe Thornton's earned the right to do whatever the hell he wants. If he wants to come back and play one more with the Sharks, should the Sharks probably move on? Yeah, but you know what? I don't care at this point. Like, it's probably one more year. I don't think he would do this, and all signs point that he wouldn't do this. But if he mercenaried himself out to Tampa Bay or whatever, great. You know what? Like I said, like for me, Joe Thornton can do whatever the hell he wants at this point. He's earned the right to do whatever the hell he wants. If he's here, great. If he retires, great. If he mercenaries himself out for 1 year to try and get that elusive cup, fantastic. No one, in my opinion, deserves it more than he does. He can do whatever the hell he wants, and I will be happy for him regardless.
Two comments in the chat I have to bring up. First, Jerry made me laugh because he said in Davos, Jumbo's beard would cover 80% of the jersey sweater ads that line over the European Hockey Club jerseys ads all the time, like a NASCAR race. But then Vince follows it up with, well, that's an easy fix because you could just dye the ads into Jumbo's beard. So I think that's just fantastic, guys.
That is some great stuff there.
Marketing. Joe Thornton's gonna rent out ad space on his beard. Just, my God.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. That's the best right there, guys. The chat's awesome. And I'm sorry, we've got like a ton of stuff to plow through here, so I haven't been super in the chat, and I apologize for that. So I guess moving on from Joe Thornton, guess the real interesting thing for the Sharks is going to be not the UFA situation, which is also interesting, but I think the RFA situation is going to be super interesting as well. And the reason I say that is because you have to wonder if Timo Meier, I think, is the one guy who could probably try and break the mold. But, I have to think that history is going to repeat here because the Sharks are very, very, very ruthless to their RFAs. Like even Hurdle, I think Hurdle's second contract wasn't that. I think it might have been
a 2-year deal.
Yeah, it was like a 2-year deal. What was it? 2 years?
2 times 3.
2 times 3, right? And I think that's pretty much the most anyone's made on their second deal. I'd have to go back and look, but yeah. I feel like in this, in the cap area, that's probably the most anyone's made on their second deal. So I wonder if this is history is going to repeat itself, and maybe Timo Meier sees a $3 million 2 deal.
I don't think so. I mean, you go back to RFAs of the past for the Sharks, at least in the recent past. Obviously, Tomas Hertl, even Logan Couture got a 2-year bridger. And that's obviously worked for the time. But I'm looking at the stats for Timo Meier, and I'm even looking at the stats for Kevin Labanc. And honestly, like, just based on how much they've done in the short amount of time they've been in the league, I wouldn't be surprised if, I'm going to use try here very strictly. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them try and blow the doors off the place. I mean, Timo Meier put up 30 goals as a 21/22-year-old. Like, very rarely does that happen for the Sharks, you know? And 66 points. He found chemistry with Logan Couture. He found chemistry with Gus Nyquist. So he's obviously very important to the team. And, I know we have it in our notes here, do the Sharks run the risk of ruining that relationship? I don't think you can. I'm not saying give everything to Timo Meier and you do 7 times 7 and you match the Kane deal. But I think if you're doing anything less than, 5 years and maybe $5 million a season, like the Jordan Eberle deal, I don't know how you get away with doing that. And even with Kevin Labanc, I mean, how he's obviously been the Sharks punching bag for 2.5 years now, but 40 points last year, 56 points. I mean, 56 points for the quote unquote worst player on the team. I mean, that's just crazy to me.
Right. I agree. And it's just interesting though, because we've seen that like the Sharks play hardball before. Like I feel like Joakim Ryan, I think Joakim Ryan has arbitration rights, which means so I wouldn't be shocked if the Sharks don't qualify him like they did to Dylan DeMello. So that way, because if you don't qualify him, guess what? No more arbitration rights. You're a free agent.
Agreed.
So I wonder if Joakim Ryan's going to be the guy that doesn't get qualified, but probably gets a deal down the road a little bit. Because I just feel like I don't think the Sharks would like to lose Joakim Ryan, but I don't think they want to go to arbitration with him either.
If you're the Sharks, you have to re-sign somebody on the back end. I still think Karlsson goes. Heed is gone. Schmick is coming off a significant injury. Like somebody's got to stay. So.
I think Schmick. I mean, I hope, anyways. But he just he was skating so soon after his injury. Like I think Schmick will be good to go. And I know you're pretty convinced Heed's going, but I don't know. I think now would be the time to give Heed one more go and say, hey, let's see what you got. I mean, from his perspective, he probably wants to go somewhere else where he for sure has a roster spot. But I think, especially if Erik Karlsson is out the door, Tim Heed played his best hockey this season when he was with Marc-Edouard Vlasic. And if you can get a full year of that, I mean, at least in my opinion, I think we still have more to see from Tim Heed if he's with Vlasic and he's getting minutes. But that's the big thing.
Yeah, I'd like to see him come back. And to your point about a spot, I mean, I think the Sharks, because of the number of spots they have on their roster, the Sharks should, in theory, be a prime team for players who are looking for a chance to become full-time NHLers. Right. I think a guy like Heed, could do that. It's just a matter of have the Sharks alienated themselves by keeping these guys on the bench for too long.
Yeah, no, and I think that's my concern too. And obviously, Erik Karlsson we're going to get to in a second, but I mean, obviously that's the big thing, right? Like if Erik Karlsson comes back, then holy hell, this team is going to be in trouble. But I think I think that Joakim Ryan's in trouble. a rough ride if he comes back. I think the Sharks will bring him back, but I think that he's going to get the DeMello treatment. They're not going to qualify him, and then they're going to sign him for a bottom basement deal, and that's going to be that.
And
sorry, go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just saying the Sharks did that with DeMello, and he ended up having his best season as a Shark and was obviously enticing enough for Ottawa to trade for him. So we'll see. I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
There's another we'll see. Drink. Have a drink.
Kevin Labanc, I think I wouldn't be like Timo Meier again, and this goes back to whatever happens with Erik Karlsson. But like Timo Meier, going back to that, I think that this is a guy that the Sharks should lock up, like should try to chew up some years on. Do you give him a 5x5? I would give him a 5x5 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's any question, but will they give him the hurdle treatment? It's going to be interesting to see. We'll see. Again, everyone's liver is dying. Absolutely.
Well, I was going to say we should make a tally for who does the most of them, and we're each at 1 right now. So, so Ian, you've said if the Sharks re-sign Erik Karlsson, we're in trouble. Why do you think the Sharks would be in trouble?
Well, that's a fantastic question, because obviously Erik Karlsson's been offered. It starts apparently at 8 times $11 million, and it might even be higher, making him the highest paid defenseman in the NHL. This is speculation. I don't know this for sure. We know that there was pictures of Doug Wilson and Erik Karlsson having dinner together. I think we're going to know what's going to happen with Erik Karlsson soon. I think if you've listened to other podcasts like 31 Thoughts, there's obviously a couple teams that Karlsson is interested in, but he has to be careful, because if the Sharks, obviously, if he's not going to come back to San Jose, and I don't know at that price that I really want Erik Karlsson back, but if he doesn't come back to San Jose, then San Jose is obviously going to have to do other things. And then, so Erik Karlsson has to be careful that someone's going to give him money, but maybe it's not in a situation that he would completely like to be in. So, like, let's say a Tampa Bay falls through, then what? He doesn't want to be in free agency kind of being like, oh, well, the Florida Panthers are offering me all this money, but I'm not going to win, but that's the best money. That's the best offer on the table. So I guess I'm a Florida Panther now. There's obviously concerns there with that. I mean, at this point, like, I love Erik Karlsson, and I think Erik Karlsson, yes, he had a rough season health-wise, but typically he plays, he's played more games than not over the past stretch of years. It's so hard to decide on this one. I feel like, I don't know. Let's start with just, should the Sharks do it at that money? Period.
No.
Hockey jerk.
No. Oh, sorry. I thought we were just one hitting it. No. No, absolutely not. Honestly, I wouldn't even do it at the money that he's making now, $6.5 million a season, because I feel like, Erik Karlsson is absolutely, the sexy name on the team, and he's good and franchise defenseman and all that great stuff. But we have Brent Burns, who is better defensively, has gotten better defensively since 2 years ago, and just scored 83 points this year. Right. 83. That's unbelievable as a defenseman. And you have Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who is probably in the top 3, top 5 best defensive defenseman in the NHL. And occasionally he can chip in on the offense, or, come in and get up in your kitchen if he has to. And you've already got those guys combining for $15 million for the next 6 years at least. Vlasic's got a little bit longer than Burns. And even if you have Karlsson come in at the same contract those guys are on, it makes zero sense to me. And it made zero sense to me when we traded for him. But I just feel like it's one of those things where the emotion and the heart is going to take over the brain in this situation. Like, if the Sharks give Karlsson 8 times 11 or 8 times 12.5 or whatever it is, like, all the other pending UFAs the Sharks have, like, goodbye. Like, the Sharks would, say they sign Erik Karlsson and then they get Timo Meier and Kevin Labanc and Dylan Gambrell and Joakim Ryan locked up. You've just rough math. You've got probably like you've got probably $5 to $6 million to bring back, hypothetically, Pavelski, Thornton, Donskoy, Nyquist, Heed. I mean, it runs out, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm against it 100%. That said, if he re-signed, you know, I guess I would be okay with it because I'm not the GM.
It's not my money. Kevin.
Well, I don't think anyone should really be surprised at the $11 million because if you listen to Teal Tinted Glasses in the off season last year, I said it would take at least a minimum of $11 million to re-sign this guy because that's what he's going to get on the open market. I thought that was the low number for him. If the Sharks re-signed Erik Karlsson, we're going to see a massive retooling on the back end. If over this offseason and next offseason, because the Sharks have 3 impending UFAs after next season on the blue line. So it's kind of, you can look at it from a bunch of different aspects. I'll try and throw out as many as you can. To Hockey Jerks thing, why would you sign Erik Karlsson at $11 million plus when you already have Brent Burns at $8 million? That's more affordable, more cap flexibility. At the same time, Brent Burns is also 5 years older than Erik Karlsson. We forget that. I mean, talking about Joe Pavelski turning 35 this year, Brent Burns just turned 34, and he still has 6 years left on his deal. Yeah, now, I think Brent Burns still does have a little bit more longevity on his career, especially if he can get his minutes down from 31 minutes a night down to 24. Yeah. But to me, if the Sharks re-sign Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns is the guy that goes because he's the next biggest cap hit. He's a right side defenseman, which we'd already be getting in Karlsson. And Burns, at the 83 points that he got this year, is a tremendous trade chip for another team to acquire and then give the Sharks the assets they need to fill out the rest of their roster.
Or one hell of a compliance buyout.
What's up?
One hell of a compliance buyout.
It's hard for me. I think it's just a matter of I'm trying not to say it. I'm just gonna say it. We'll see what happens but for real though, because this Karlsson thing is going to shape the entire roster going into next year. So
I agree with everything you're saying. I just don't I agree if the Sharks re-sign Karlsson, it makes sense for Brent Burns to be traded, but I just don't foresee the Sharks trading Brent Burns. I mean, to me, you just look, he's got such a marketable personality and he's such an amazing talent. He honestly screams Sharks for life to me, Yeah. And I know
we could for sure.
We've now turned into a season ticket commercial, but I mean, he does, he honestly, I would not be surprised. He gets through that year, he gets through 6 more years, and you know what? He's a freak in the gym and nutritionally. Who knows? 8 years or 6 more years goes by, he might still be freaking playing. We'll see. But I just don't foresee them trading him
because he is such a physical specimen. He could be the next Chris Chelios. I do agree with you.
Chara, I think look at Chara, for. Not that there's, I mean, they're both big guys, but obviously Chara's much bigger. But I mean, if you look at the stuff that Chara does to keep himself able to play, every year, his workout regimen is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And Brent Burns is very much in that same vein where he just does crazy off-season training. He's a guy that I could see going on forever. Erik Karlsson, here's the problem, right? With Erik Karlsson. I love Erik Karlsson. I think he's a generational defenseman. And I think that we kind of, as Shark fans, we kind of got hosed because he was injured a lot this year. And obviously injuries going forward is obviously a huge concern, but I think something now, again, the money's too high, and I do want to talk about the money in a second, but I would just hate to see him go somewhere else and then have like a healthy season, and then we'd be like, damn it.
Yeah, for
Right?
sure.
I and it's hard. Like it being Doug Wilson, that's what obviously you're banking on him being healthy. Now, the money thing really kind of upsets me though, because now I'm not saying, Erik Karlsson's not worth the money, and maybe some people argue he isn't, and that's fine. I think he's worth the money, but my problem is why do the Sharks, like, why does this team have to overpay these guys so badly to try to get them to come here? I don't understand.
Taxes.
Is it though?
It is at least for the low end guys. I don't know about the upper end guys.
Like, do you think John Tavares isn't paying through the nose in Toronto?
I heard. Yeah.
Sure. And there's how this podcast relates to.
Boom.
But I agree with you, Ian. I think Brent Burns now actually looks like a song, but like I think Evander Kane was an overpayment. I mean, obviously it's a different situation, but I even think Joe Thornton was an overpayment, and there's
not even like this past year was an overpayment. The year before he made $8 million.
Exactly.
Yeah, couldn't believe that.
And I just no, you're absolutely right, Ian. I don't like if. I get it. You want to get the whole donut, right, when you're re-signing, and you want to get as much as you can. But at least from my perspective, if you love where you're playing and what you're doing, wouldn't you take whatever you can get theoretically?
Yeah, okay, and I understand the Barrier is one of the most expensive places in the world. Forget the United States, the world to live, and I do understand that. But here, like, it just. To me, it's mind-boggling though, because this is a team that is okay. Yes, they have no cup, but this is a perennial playoff team. Yeah. This is a good team. This is a team where guys come and they generally love playing. It's a nice area. Like, okay, fine, you have to pay some taxes. I'm telling you right now, you're paying taxes in other places too. It's not like the whole league doesn't exist in Florida and Nevada.
Well.
Right? Like there's other teams that are in places that have, taxes, and especially I think up here, I think Vancouver, that's another area that we are heavily taxed. So from that perspective, it really frustrates me that the Sharks have to overpay, because it's not like they're an ass team that has to overpay people to come here. Like, they shouldn't have to overpay players to come here, because they've got maybe now free agents are starting to look and like, oh, I don't know, a lot of guys signed long term, not sure what that team's going to look like by the end of my deal. Sure, but for me, it's frustrating that they almost had to pay John Tavares $13 million or something stupid. Like, that was their final offer to John Tavares. Now we're talking possibly more than $11 million a year for Erik Karlsson. It's, as a fan, it's super frustrating that the Sharks continually, despite being like, it's not 1993 anymore. Right? Yep. Like, this is a proven hockey market, in my opinion. Yes, SAP Center doesn't sell, but it still sells a hell of a lot better than a lot of other teams in the league.
Like Ottawa.
It's like Ottawa. Perfect example. Even when the Senators are good, unless they're playing Toronto, not a great turnout. That's the part that frustrates me, is the fact that the Sharks seem to have to continuously overpay for these guys. And if you look at the Stanley Cup final, you look at the contracts, the highest contracts on those teams.
Yep.
7.25 for the Bruins, 7.5 for the Blues. That was their highest cap hit. And then everyone else trickles in under. All these teams, you look at teams like, you look at what's going on again. Here's how the podcast relates to Toronto. You look at what's going on in Toronto this summer with Mitch Marner. Like, they haven't even won a playoff round. And these guys want, they all want more than $10 million each. Like, how do you build depth around that? Like, it's stupid.
Exactly. That's what we talked about a couple weeks ago on the show, was just, I get that you want to solidify yourself for life with your finances and whatnot, but if you're playing to win, why don't you take a couple million off your ridiculously expensive contract you're going to get anyway, and put that back into the team so that the team can go use that and get a better player to help support you in your quest for the cup. And that's why I always say I respect the hell out of Marian Hossa and Daniel Alfredson, who restructured their contracts years ago for Ottawa. It's the only time I can think of in the last 20 years that we've heard of players restructuring their contracts, because they wanted to help the Senators get better around those players. And then they ended up going to the Cup Finals because of it. Versus, I mean, look at Washington this last year. I mean, the counter to that, Washington sent Brooks Orpik to Colorado to buy out his contract and then re-signed him for cheaper. Like, just renegotiate the deal. Like, I just don't get players.
On that topic, I don't know how that's not cap circumvention, but I just looking really quick, and you're both absolutely right. So an $11 million salary living in San Jose, that's a net of $5.53 million. So, I mean, you're losing 49% of your cash, but still, like, Kevin, $5.5 million in the Bay Area. I mean, that's a good chunk of cheese, no?
It's well over 10 times what I'm making per year. So,
but my point is, like,
or 100 times or whatever. God.
But, like, what my point that I'm trying to make is, okay, so say you live in San Jose and you essentially have to forfeit 49% of your income to the taxes. Even if you're a $6 million player, if you're netting close to $3 million in San Jose, you're sitting fantastically. I mean, even look at guys like I know, like, Marcus Sorensen comes to mind, and even Jonas Donskoy comes to mind. Like, these are guys who have not made a lot of money, but they're doing quite all right for themselves in the Bay Area. Now, should the Sharks turn around and be like, here you go, Carl, 8 times 6? Absolutely not. But I think 11 million is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just like, if you want the team, like, and it sucks because it's like, what do? You let, it was in the chat earlier, and I don't remember who said it, and I apologize. And I'm just too lazy to scroll because my mouse makes too much noise. But, Erik Karlsson's a guy that can bring you in, that the idea is that you sign a guy like Erik Karlsson, and then you can bring in other guys cheaper because you say, look, we have Erik Karlsson, we have Brent Burns, so if you want to come in and be a part of that, that's great. And I do get that, but I just feel like every time the Sharks are in this situation, they're constantly either, they're constantly just overpaying or trying to overpay for guys. And it's just, I think it's stupid. And maybe this is something that Doug Wilson maybe has done too many times. And players know that, well, if I don't sign long enough and I have enough, other people talking to me, Doug Wilson's going to throw me this huge freaking offer. So maybe Doug Wilson's partially to blame for this as well. But I just, as a Sharks fan, I find it very frustrating because this team, yes, no cup, but it's a good team. And you know what? There's lots of teams out there with no cup that are good teams, and players seem to want to go to, despite not being maybe the most hockey of hockey markets. And it makes me crazy.
Yeah. So, I was just going to say, speaking of crazy, if the Sharks re-sign Erik Karlsson, you look at guys, not guys who are UFAs. I mean, obviously, we've talked to Pavelski, Donskoy, Thornton. Mm-hmm. We have not talked to Nyquist. I'm hoping the Sharks make it work. All I'm saying, instant chemistry with Couture and Meyer. But look at the guys who are going to be free agents. I believe Kevin brought it up earlier. Dylan and Braun and Šimek are all UFAs next season, as are Radil and Melker Karlsson and Aaron Dell. A lot of guys you could probably get away with losing, but right. I know for whatever reason, there's still a small contingent who are like, Brendan Dillon is the worst person ever in life. I don't either. But, like, how are you not looking at, like, Brendan Dillon this season, especially on July 1, he'll be eligible for an extension. How do you not look at this season? He played with Karlsson. He played with Burns. He played with Heed. He played with, like, everybody, and was probably, like, the best defenseman, not in terms of points, but just the best defenseman, emphasizing defense on the Sharks. Like, when July 1 hits and he's eligible, how are you not going to him and say, hi, 6 times 6? Like, that's a big, chunk of cheese to give to him, but I don't think the Sharks can afford to lose Brendan Dillon. And bringing in Erik Karlsson for that much, or bringing him back, I should say, it hurts the Sharks, obviously, with the guys they need to re-sign now, but also a year from now.
It hurts them forever because they've already got too many long-term deals.
Yep.
Like, the problem with the Sharks is you have too many long-term deals, and what you're going to end up in a situation. Sorry, Kevin, I'll get back to you in a second. I keep cutting you off, and I really.
No, you're okay.
I'm just ranting now.
Yep.
You're going to end up in a situation like, again, here's how this podcast relates to the Toronto Maple Leafs. But right now, they're trying to get out from under, Marleau. Marleau's not a long-term deal, but obviously it's longer than it should have been. And then they sign Zaitsev forever, and I'll never understand why. And you're trying to get out from under both of those deals to make the cap work. And this is where the Sharks are going to have to go. Like, if you bring Erik Karlsson in, you have to start looking at some of these long-term deals and be like, okay, who's the guy that has to, who's the guy we have to get out from under now? Are you looking at buying out Evander Kane in a compliance buyout? If there's a lockout, obviously you're going to probably want to have someone take Justin Braun off your hands, and probably Aaron Dell. Just next season alone, you probably need to get under at least those two contracts to get anything done. And then, and again, it's like, I am not the biggest Justin Braun fan, as well noted on this podcast, but you still have to replace him with someone.
Exactly. I think that Justin Braun is a guy, again, especially if the Sharks re-sign Erik Karlsson, and I mentioned Brent Burns is gone, I think Justin Braun is gone. I think Dylan stays, but I mean, Braun would be another guy that just goes out because he's a UFA after the year anyway. So you might as well try and get something for him now to replace the back end on the future. I actually don't even remember what I was going to say before that, but Dylan. Okay, so Hockey Jerk said 6x6 for Dylan. I think the reason you go to him in July 1st is to avoid 6x6 the following year or later in the year. I think if you get it done as soon as possible, I think it could be a cheaper bargain than getting closer to the UFA period where he will get $6 million on the open market. So get it done now.
Scary. Yeah, that's scary. Because to me, like, I mean, what's Dylan making now?
Brendan Dylan making
3.27.
I would.
Oh, sorry. I've got
3.27. Yeah, man.
That's Braun.
Jump to like there's a guy like even Dylan, as much as I like Dylan, man, at times I like for anything more than 4.5 is too much.
Yeah, see Zaitsev to me is a comparable. You talked about Zaitsev, they can't get rid of his contract. That is a $4.5 million per year contract. I think Zaitsev's a fine defenseman. I don't think he's a great defenseman. I think he's just a fine defenseman. But if that's too much, then I think that's kind of the litmus test, I guess, for the other players around him. So oh dang it, there's a we'll see.
somebody write that down. I'm with you, Kevin. I do think Zaitsev is a fine defenseman, but that's like, that's the operative word, is fine. And
yeah, he's fine.
You say you're not comfortable going over the Zaitsev deal for Dylan. I think Dylan has absolutely earned more than the Zaitsev deal. I mean, he's put up more points. I think he's better defensively, and I think he's a better skater too. And I think if you're like, hey, here's 4.25, I think he's gonna be like, yeah, screw this, I'm going somewhere else.
So if Karlsson comes back, just circling back to Karlsson again, just to kind of circling back, but just to kind of wrap this up in a little bow. I mean, if Karlsson comes back at, obviously what we're expecting him to get, I mean, who's gone? I guess everyone's gone, right? Like, who you bringing back? You can't bring back anyone. Like, Nyquist is gone. I'm with Jerk. I would like to see Nyquist stick around. Obviously Donskoy. I think Donskoy's gone, and then Joe Pavelski. I can't see how you sign him and bring back Joe Pavelski. Like, Joe Pavelski would have to be gone.
Either that or take a really big haircut.
Which I don't see happening.
No, not at all. I think Pavelski, like we talked about earlier, he's absolutely deserved to ring the bell one more time. And Doug Will, and this is the other thing is like Doug Wilson and staff. Obviously they preach about being smart with the money and making everything work and all that stuff. I think, and it's the same thing with the John Tavares offer last season, where it's like it's against everything. It's like literally against the Sharks' business model to give out a contract that huge.
Yep. Yeah, no, it is, and it just like that's why I said that like that's the frustrating thing. Like when it comes to the big players, the Sharks just have to consistently, break their own system to make it work, and I think it's stupid. Also, did anyone take seriously the rumors that he would like to get a contract from the Senators?
Nope.
Nope, neither did I. I was like, is Eugene Alex still the owner? Yep. Guess what? Guess who does not want to go back to Ottawa? I thought that was absolutely silly. I want to wrap up on the Sharks here on one last topic that I'm sure I like making people angry. Before we talk about it, I'm going to tell you right now, I hate rainbows. I hate sunshine. The song from the 90s, garbage only happen when it rains. That's my song, man. I hate everything. If it makes me happy, I hate it. And if it makes you happy, I hate it more. Everyone keeps linking the Sharks to Patrick Marleau. For starters, because it's just lazy journalism, in my opinion. I think it's just like, oh, well, he was in the Bay Area for so long and, he'd want to go back. And I know the family has been seen down in the area.
But that's every off season, though.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It makes my head hurt a little bit. Okay, obviously the Sharks cannot take Marleau at his current ticket. So the only way the Sharks could get Marleau back is if he is traded to another team, bought out by a team that's going to, suck the basement, because that cap or the buyout is going to be pretty significant. I don't have it in front of me, but
it from my understanding, because it's a 35 plus deal, if Toronto were to buy him out, they wouldn't get any cap savings.
Right. Whoever trades for that contract, which obviously I think, someone's going to have to take that poison pill, and Toronto's going to have to give something else up to get out from under that contract. If that's their plan, then they're gonna have to probably have to include something really sweet in that pot to make a team.
Andreas Janssen or Kasperi Kapanen,
something along those lines. Maybe one of their defensemen from the Marlies.
Nikita Zaitsev.
Nikita Zaitsev, yeah, they like that. Here, you can take Nikita Zaitsev and buy out Marleau. The only way,
Ottawa,
maybe Ottawa. That's the only way I can see a team really, really doing this, right? Like another team would have to buy him out, making him a free agent, and then the Sharks would have to circle the wagon here. And I feel like,
one times one.
Is there any price where Marleau comes back? Like I don't.
1 times 1.
1 times 1. All right. You know what? Maybe I would live with that. Probably not, because what
that's
everything
my Joe Thornton
going to do. And Joe Thornton's not coming back for that either. That's whatever happens this summer with the cap. Like, I don't understand a way where you bring back Marleau at any price, unless maybe you have to. I don't know. See, I don't like it. I don't like it because you're doing it. You're not doing it for the right reasons, in my opinion. He doesn't make the team better. Maybe he does if you have to deplete your forward roster where Marleau is actually an upgrade somewhere. Possible. Wouldn't like that. That speaks to bigger problems. If we have the big get the band back together tour, where are you guys at?
Well, we should see what Thomas Greiss is up to. I think Dan Boyle still lives in San Jose. Give him a call. Now, I do like where you're going, Ian. If you say you think about teams who've got these big dollar guys. I mean, Pittsburgh comes to mind. Obviously, you've got Kessel, Crosby, Malkin, Letang eating up a lot of your cap, and so you insulate them with guys. You think back, Brian Rust, Connor Sherry, Jake Gensel, John Johnson and Steve Stevenson and all the other made up name guys. That might be an interesting model to take. Now, assuming Toronto can offload Marleau to a team in cap, I guess I don't know if you're under the floor. Are you still in cap hell, or is that like cap heaven because you're like kind of in a good spot and you have to?
It's cap heaven for the owner, cap hell for the fans.
Well, and actually I like too that you brought up Ottawa, or whichever one of you brought up Ottawa, because with the Dion with the Dion Phaneuf buyout, and we'll obviously get there, Ottawa's retained salary is now less, which means they're even further away from the cap floor. So there might be something there. But even if that happens, like, you know, Toronto trades him and he's bought out, and then he comes to San Jose 1x1. He could be a situation where it's like, yeah, we got all these guys making a bunch of money. Here are some cheap guys to slide in, and then you kind of go for the Chicago method as well, where you can turn you can turn an Andrew Shaw into a couple draft picks. You can turn a Brandon Saad into an Artem Anisimov, and whatever. You kind of combine a little methods here. But with all that in mind, I still don't like it on multiple fronts. So
Sleepy said something, and I'm completely 100% behind this. If Marleau wants to come and open the door from game 1 to end of the playoffs, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, it's just like, again, I don't want this to be like, oh, the big retirement tour. Like, you can do nice things or you can win. I would rather win than do nice things.
Yep.
And I just don't feel like Marleau puts you in that winning category. Again, maybe if your forward staff is so depleted because you have to move things around and jigger things around that you have to do it, then maybe you consider it at the right price. But you know what? Like, it's done. Move on. Like, it's done.
Well, and you get the band back together, right? And the Blackhawks have been doing the retirement tour for, I think, this season, was their 5th year in a row doing the retirement tour. And how has that gone for them? I mean, they've only made the playoffs a couple of those years, and even then they've lost in the first round each of those years. So yeah, the retirement tour is not really the way to go.
Yeah.
So
I get why people would like to see it, and I get why I'm expecting all kinds of hate on my Twitter. Like, I get it, and I'm fine. You know what? I will never tell you how to fan. I will just tell you how miserable it makes me.
Yeah. Kevin, and where can they find you on Twitter, Ian?
At Ian Blog Hockey before I change it, so people can find me.
For those of you who are just tuning in, because I know a few people have joined us here at the hour and 15-minute mark or wherever we're at, but thank you for tuning in tonight on your Saturday night.
Yeah,
please subscribe to Teal Tinted Glasses, because we like to do this from time to time, and we're going to have a bunch of shows coming up here between tonight's show. Next weekend is the draft. The following weekend is free agent frenzy. So, in fact, we'll probably end up having 2 draft shows. So,
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it all comes together. But
there it is.
Yeah. Nevertheless, please subscribe and set that notification bell if you are new to the channel, or if you're not. If you just have been lazy like me and haven't set a notification bell, go ahead and do that so that we got some upcoming shows here. But again, thanks for tuning in, and sorry that you can't see my pretty live face because I'm really sick, but it's okay. Enjoying talking with you guys tonight.
Absolutely. Okay, so we got about 20 minutes.
Welcome to part 2.
Welcome to part 2. Ideally, we got 20 minutes left, but we'll probably go past it because we're a bunch of jerks.
We got 40 minutes left before YouTube stops our feeds, so there's that.
Oh, YouTube will let us run for like 8 hours. Okay, so let's get to some of the NHL stuff going on. I thought, just some noteful stuff. Obviously, the Kings, the buyout window's open. The Kings bought out Dion Phaneuf. So the cap hit's going to be interesting here, because here's another reason why I think that teams are counting on a lockout. The cap hit for next season is 2.1975 for the million for the 2019 season. The 2020 cap hit for the LA Kings and the Dion Phaneuf buyout, $4,062,000 and $62,500. Which is the highest year of the buyout that they have to pay for. And of course, it's coincidental that just happens to fall in the 2020 season where we might have a lockout, which is why I really think this thing's a thing, because man, having $4 million tied up in buyout money in 2020 for a team that's trying, I mean, obviously the Kings are trying to get things turned around. It's not going to be an overnight process, but man, that hurts. in the 2020, and then the 2021 season, $1,062,500, and the same for the 2022. Also of note, this is the final year of the Mike Richards cap recapture penalty, so add another $1,320,000 against the Kings cap.
They almost made it.
Kevin, what's your thoughts on Phaneuf being bought out, and where do you think he could potentially wind up?
I think so. This will go along with the fact or fiction that Rob Iman had earlier on Dion Phaneuf. Where does he go? Because he said fact or fiction. Does he go to the KHL? I think he goes to retirement with his beautiful wife. So I don't think Dion Phaneuf has a career left to play in pro hockey because, I mean, for the number of years that we've been, I mean, this goes back to when he was with Toronto, even talking about, is it time to let him go? Is he, too far gone in the NHL? And then he had a couple of good years there with Ottawa, but yeah, it just hasn't worked out ever since then. Even his last year in Ottawa was bad. And so now it's 3 just poor years now in a row, I think, for Dion Phaneuf. I think he's done.
I think he's done, eh?
Sure. Even then too, his before he went to Ottawa, those 2-3 years he was with the Toronto Leafs was not really any better. I mean, that was right in the middle of, all the turmoil that was going on there. And, there were, at that point in time, we're talking 2013, 2014, 15, people are already talking about how, his best days are long gone. Like, cause 60-point year in Calgary. I mean, he scored 17 goals 2 years in a row. Like, he was obviously good at one point. And so I think I'm with Kevin. Like, you see guys, they're good, and then they stumble a little bit and they get that last chance and they cash in on it. But I think with Phaneuf, he's had too many stumbles, like his end in Toronto was not great. His overall time in Ottawa was okay. It was not good. And then even in LA, same thing. It was somehow worse than his last year in Ottawa. I'm with Kevin. I think best case scenario, he gets a PTO on August 26th, but that's about it.
Yeah, because I think that was my next question is, obviously, I don't think Phaneuf's been good for a while, but is that magnified by the cap hit? Like, is there a number where Dion Phaneuf could still be a defenseman in the NHL?
1 times 1.
I really don't even think that.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I haven't watched enough Dion Phaneuf to really make a take, which is kind of why I posed the question, because I can't think of a way that you make it work, right?
I would like to just mention really quick, Fourpaws saying, how did Dion Phaneuf get this huge contract? When he signed his contract, he was on the Leafs at a time where Toronto was not paying guys for what they did. Toronto was paying guys for how many minutes they were playing.
Yeah. He was truculent.
Yep. God, that's a brutal contract.
It was an awful deal, and I think but it always makes me wonder when you see an awful deal like that, where you go, okay, is this player an NHLer still, or is the deal really blowing out of proportion how bad he is? And I don't know. Flyers also in buyout news, the Flyers bought out Andy McDonald. Cap hit, not really anything significant. 1.666667. 6 into eternity. In 21, 1.916667. Or 19, 20, sorry, yeah. Going 19 and then 20, the 2020-21 season. Again, I think in this case, I think the Flyers just needed to get out from under a contract. I mean, they got out from under a couple of contracts, which we'll get to in a second, but I don't know. I don't mind this move. I didn't like the Andy McDonald deal when it was signed. I don't think. So I feel like they're, the Flyers are a team that have guys that are kind of being blocked right now from really getting their NHL opportunity. And I think this is going to help them see what they have, because I think they have a pretty deep defensive pipeline, in my opinion.
I feel bad for Andrew McDonald because I feel like he was in a situation similar to Wade Redden, where it's not that he was a bad player. It was just that for what he was being paid, it just wasn't going to fit.
Right.
Because so Andrew McDonald, I think 2, maybe even 3 times, got buried in the AHL because of his contract. But it wasn't that he was playing poorly for the Flyers, which is funny because there are a lot of guys you could say were playing poorly for the Flyers.
Absolutely.
But every time he got called up, I thought he did just fine. And I mean, he was playing, as far as I recall, he was playing significant minutes for them too. So you asked the question about Dion Phaneuf. Is this a situation where his cap hit, for Phaneuf, where his cap hit is kind of overshadowing his career, and could he wind up somewhere? I say no. I think Phaneuf just doesn't have anything left to give, as we saw in LA. But I think with Andrew McDonald on a much more affordable deal, like $1 million to $1.5 million, I think he could continue his career somewhere. He's not a sexy player. He's a player that can be relied on for third pair minutes.
Yeah. He's your reliable third pair guy, which I think every team needs. Kevin, Dirk.
No, I like what Kevin said. I could absolutely see. I mean, like you said, he's not that sexy name, and I've personally never been super thrilled about him. Even when the Islanders traded him to the Flyers, I'm like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But from a Flyers perspective. But yeah, I think especially a guy, he's obviously had a lot of crap flung at him the last 4 years. Like, this is a guy who wants to prove that he belongs in the league. And, he's 32 years old, so he's up there, especially for a defenseman. But I don't really feel like he's had a very taxing career phically. Yeah. So,
and he's very mobile. He's a very mobile defenseman too. Mm-hmm. So I mean, at 32, he can get away with that. He can get away with his age, is what I mean to say.
Right. Yeah, and weirdly enough, he actually had a career high in goals. Not this past season, but the year before. So he's not that far removed from actually making somewhat of a positive impact. So. No, I'm with Kevin. I think you might see him I think you might see him end up like somewhere like the LA Kings. I mean, the LA Kings are going to need to fill some bodies on that back end. Because I don't think you look at guys, I mean, like Fantenberg and Ledoux when they had him and all these guys. I mean, they're fine, but they're not, they haven't taken that next step. Well, I hate to use the cliche, but like, McDonald, he's been in the league for a while. He knows what it takes and he's good in the room and all that stuff. So
maybe Edmonton, they could use any kind of leadership on the back end. Maybe Edmonton's a good spot for him.
I think, I agree with you guys. I think Andy McDonald is going to play in the NHL next year, because I think there's a lot of teams that at a more reasonable cap hit would absolutely, he's like I said, he's the steady third pairing guy that you need, that every team needs. I think he's going to have a lot of suitors for the right price, because he's going to get that buyout money. So, that's going to factor into how much he's going to want to make. He might be an absolute steal for somebody. He might come in at less than $1 million and just be an absolute steal for a team, based on what he's still going to bring, in my opinion. And for less than $1 million, why not? Even $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. Out on the wire even said, bring him to the Sharks. Well, the Sharks are going to have a couple spots on the back end. Why not?
I honestly, I don't hate it, because you're going to need guys in the cheap. And I don't think that there's, who are you going to put on the blue line if you have to move out from under guys, right? Like, I guess, you give Mario Ferraro a shot and Jacob Middleton a shot, but man, like, I'll know after last year where I was kind of really I was really high on the depth going into this season, and it didn't really work out the way we wanted it to. And, some of that was just poor coaching, but also some of that was just guys weren't there. And I would rather have that guy that, that I know can play the third pair minutes than the guy that might be able to play the third pair minutes or, play 2 minutes a night because Peter DeBoer is a jerk off.
I like too what KM said in the chat about Flyers having a lot of cap space. They've got $34 million in cap space, and
because they're going for it now. They're not after Hextall's patience thing. Now they're going more crazy. They're gonna be super in that free agent market. They're gonna be looking at guys like Duchesne and all these other guys that are gonna hit UFA. They're gonna be they're going to hit hard, I think.
Yeah. And really the only big names they have to re-sign are Ivan Provorov and Travis Konechny. I mean, obviously some guys, in the middle and the bottom of their lineup, they got to re-up, but not anybody who's going to, blow the doors off their cap structure. But
right.
And they also acquired Kevin Hayes, so they're trying to re-sign him.
Absolutely.
Could, if things don't work out with, say they trade Ghost Despair for, some more forward help or whatever. I mean, is it possible the Flyers might try and take a sniff at Erik Karlsson?
Never know.
I mean, the Flyers could give Erik Karlsson freaking 7 times 14. I mean, they got the room for it.
They did it. They offered it to Shea Weber, didn't they?
Ridiculous like that.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's do some quick math here. So $11 million salary, as we said in San Jose.
It's 98, by the way. 7 times 14 is 98.
Yeah. Like if he were to get, let's just say he got $11 million in Philadelphia, hypothetically.
Yeah.
That you're netting in Philadelphia, you're netting $6.2 million. So that's $700,000.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Per year. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if he's looking for a payday, that might be the spot.
Just before Paz asked a question I want to answer quick.
Go for it.
Just kind of circling back to the Sharks for a second, and then I want to get to the trade that the Flyers made. As far as goaltending goes, what do you guys think the Sharks are going to do in goaltending? I think that they try to move out from Arundel. I know a lot of people are penciling Cornash in as the backup. I don't like that plan at all. I do not want. I want Cornash to play a crap ton of games in the AHL. I do not want him sitting behind Jones for 70 games.
Anyone who says that is not watching our podcast, and we need to rectify that.
We need to educate people. Look at Arundel. I think you can get comparable play from Antoine Bibeau for less money.
Yep.
And I think that's the play. I think you go Jones, Bibeau, let Cornash play in the AHL, and then whoever backs him up, fantastic. I think you want, although a lot of teams seem to be moving to more of a goalie pontoon system, I don't see the Sharks going that way because PDB likes to play the hell out of his starter. So I want somebody, you don't need an amazing backup for Jones. You just need someone who can chew up some minutes near the end of the season when, Peter DeBoer's already run the wheels off of him.
Yep.
Say it. Say the mantra. Say it.
I still believe that the Sharks will carry 3 goalies, and I'm not including Cornash as 3 goalies. I mean, Jones, Bibeau, and Dell, 3 goalies into camp. Let Bibeau earn himself the spot over Dell, and then Dell gets waived. Or Dell ends up getting traded for future considerations to a team who had a goalie go down during training camp, or lost a goalie because of waivers, like Toronto loses every goalie imaginable, to waivers, and then the Sharks go, "Hey, we've got Arundel. Here, have him."
Oh man,
I think that's the ideal.
Going to be a hell of a player.
What was that? Future considerations?
Hell of a player.
Yeah,
I understand.
The scouts are very fond of him. I mean, it kind of a concern to me, though. I mean, he keeps getting traded, but we'll see.
I'm still curious to see what the future considerations for Vincent Praplin's going to be. I wonder. I know, for real. What is it? A bag of pucks?
Well, I was gonna say, I don't remember. I think I might have tweeted it, or maybe I said it on a podcast. But I pictured in the draft at Vancouver, Dale Talon's going to be walking down the hall and he's going to see Doug Wilson, and Doug Wilson's going to be like, "Hey, do you got a buck? I want to get some chips."
Yeah. He goes back with a plate of nachos and a soft drink and he goes, "Hey, here's your future considerations." Oh, thanks. Done deal.
All right. So the Flyers, going back to the Flyers here, they traded Radko Gudas to Washington for Matt Niskanen. Man, has Matt Niskanen's stock ever fallen?
Why? Because the cap hit?
Maybe I'm in the minority, but I like this deal for the Flyers.
No, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Why would you do that?
A lot of people, just from what I briefly read on the Twitter machine today, a lot of people are higher on Gudas than they are on Niskanen.
Why?
Especially when the Flyers are retaining $1,005,000 on Gudas for the next season.
What, because Gudas is a taller Roman Polak? Like,
I mean, Niskanen is
by the
very.
way, got re-signed by Dallas. Roman
Yes,
Polak.
he did, and he got a raise too. He was like their 12th defenseman, and he got a raise. But I like Matt Niskanen. For those who don't know, the Sharks were actually the runner-up to sign Niskanen in 2014. God, I remember that. But he put up some really good years with the Capitals, and he's a very good skater. He can chip in on your back end, and Lord knows the Flyers need scoring from the back end. So I think this is a huge hit for them. And they're getting a guy who doesn't take nearly as many penalties or get suspended nearly as many times.
Yeah.
Like, so Brian McClellan's number is going to be on speed dial for player safety, right?
Oh, it's got to be.
Like, between Wilson and Gudas, yeah.
No, yeah, between like Brian McClellan, the GM of the Capitals, right?
Yeah.
And he's gonna be, him and like on speed dials, George Paris will just be like, beep. Okay, so today it's Radko Gudas, and we're gonna talk to what's his name tomorrow? Tom Wilson tomorrow.
Man. Clear cap dump to me,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
just I don't know, man. I mean, good on the Flyers. I like Matt Niskanen, and you guys are talking about the Flyers have an enormous amount of cap space. I mean, there you go. This is chump change for Niskanen, for him, for them, and they get an extra year out of Niskanen because he's got 2 years left versus Gudas 1, and to me, the money is worth it for the player that you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me though, like for a team that, early in the season, when things are going well for the Flyers, there was a lot of attention paid to, there's no fighting majors on this team. What the hell's going on? Because, that was the problem was, not enough fighting majors for the Flyers. Right. And then, so you trade, like, it's interesting to me that after, that was kind of the scuttlebutt of what was kind of being in the head office, the kind of the dismay of the lack of toughness in the Philadelphia locker room. And then they go and trade their toughest guy this summer. So I think that's kind of interesting from them, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, obviously, who won the trade? I think the Flyers do get a ton of cap space out of this, and that's nice for them. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see. Like, I think the Flyers are going to be a very interesting team to watch this summer to see what they do.
I think too where this stems. I think the Flyers absolutely win the trade right here, right now, but I don't think the Capitals necessarily lost the trade. I mean, they clear out a good chunk of cap space between the 5.5 million Niskanen was getting and the 1 million the Flyers retain on Gudas. They've got some extra cap space to work with. I mean, Vrana needs to come back. He had a good season. Chandler Stevenson, I really like as a fourth line center. He needs to come back. Burakovsky maybe figures it out. He's a guy who comes back. But the thing that Mick Dowd, yeah. But the thing that, he's actually re-upped for a good amount of time. So good on them. But the thing that intrigued me is I was reading that, like, the Capitals were clearing cap space so they could afford to re-sign Carl Hagelin. And I'm just like, what? Like, like, you're going the wrong direction, Chief. Like, I don't understand. Like, he's okay, but he really hasn't done anything to impress me since he was on the Rangers.
Okay, so let's go to let's get some contract signings here, and then there's another trade we can touch on at the end here. Eberle signs 5 times 5.5 with the Islanders. I like this deal for the Islanders. Obviously, Lou Lamoriello's must have like a dungeon or something where he locks people's families up. It's the only explanation. Not coming off the greatest season, which obviously I think helped the well, I shouldn't say that. Regular season, not his best regular season, but he had a hell of a playoff series, which obviously I think everyone kind of thought, oh shit, now he's going to get paid. I really like this deal for the Islanders. I think that this is gonna. I think in 2-3 years, this might be one of the best deals in the league.
These are the kind of deals that you need to help build your team up, like your team up. Talking about it earlier with Toronto, how many $11 million guys can you put on one team before you figure out that you can't pay anyone else on your roster? Like Eberle, this is a very affordable deal. I've always liked Jordan Eberle, and even though he seemed to always be getting run out of town in Edmonton for whatever reason, and then ever since then, all we've been hearing about is, oh, maybe the Oilers shouldn't have traded Taylor Hall and Jordan Eberle. Maybe it was, it's a great deal. Showed up in the playoffs, and if it doesn't work out, I still think it was worth the risk. You're not paying him 8 years times his contract or 5 years times $8 million. So I think that's worth it.
Plus, I like what you said, Kevin, and also to consider, with where the salary cap is going. I mean, it's gone up at least $2 million the last few years. Like, by the midpoint of that contract, say 3 years from now, like, with where the salary cap is projected to be, $5 million could easily be the new $3 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I remember too, like when I first actually started like looking at like cap hits and points per game and all that good stuff. I remember thinking like, if you were $1 over $6 million, it's like, what are you doing? And now it's like, if you clock in at 8, like you won out, you know what I mean? So, so it's like, it's not like, if you can get a guy like with how much the cap is going up, if you can get that guy under $6 million every year, it's automatically a better deal, because it's now lower than what the market value was. And it's also, technically it's a pay cut from what he was making on his previous deal. I mean, not a huge pay cut, but a pay cut nonetheless. I mean, as we've seen with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we will see with the San Jose Sharks in, about 23 days, every dollar is going to count. And I think if you're Doug Wilson or if you're Gus Nyquist and you're looking to get a contract worked out between the two, I mean, I'm looking at this deal and I say this is the comparable 5 times 5.5.
And for the Islanders, I mean, this is great because now the money's there for Robin Lehner. If you're going to bring back Robin Lehner, he's probably going to make more than you'd probably like to make based on just one season alone. But I mean, where the hell the Islanders without Robin Lehner?
Well, and they need to re-sign their captain too.
True. So I mean, there's definitely some space that there's definitely guys that they're going to be able to get their guys under contract if they want to return because they've got $20 million in cap space, and they'll still be a good team next year.
They might even be better, honestly.
They might. No, absolutely.
Like Kevin said, Eberle had a down year. If Eberle turns it around, all of a sudden they're a better team. If a guy like Anthony Beauvillier can turn things around, they're a better team. Bailey and Lee and Nelson, obviously they had a dip in points compared to Tavares' last season with the Islanders, but if they can turn it around, all of a sudden they're going to be cooking with gas. And especially, just looking, they've got a bunch of defensemen too. So even if one guy goes down, it's literally next man up.
Well, it's okay. And he had 37 points this year, right? Mm-hmm. That was his worst season. There was only one season where he put out that low of points, and that was the season that he actually split in the AHL. Right? Like this guy's consistently been a 40, 50 point guy. 37 is not that is not the norm for him. So I mean, this is one of those deals where it's like, look, he's 29. It's not like he's in the tailspin of his career. Like this, I think this deal. You're gonna look at when you look at some of the best deals signed, in my opinion, you're gonna look at Nathan McKinnon and you're gonna look at Jordan Eberle and say that's how you do a deal.
Yeah.
To win.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, that's it. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, and the Islanders even have more. I want to know, because Michael Del Col, don't forget, he was, third, fourth overall. They still have Michael Del Col tearing up the AHL, waiting to get called up. But what do the Isles do with Joshua Kosang? Just curious.
That's a fantastic question.
I think it's going to be a situation, unfortunately, because I think there is a degree of skill there, but I think with him it's going to be a Nikolai Goldobin thing where maybe come the trade deadline next year, maybe they ship him out for a middle six guy to kind of come in and clean it up. I mean, Josh Hosting is still a very good player, obviously a decent playmaker in the AHL, but he's now had 3 seasons with time with the Islanders, and he's been good, but not really great. And I still wonder if, even though it's a new GM, it's a new coach, I still wonder if that stain from, when he missed his alarm clock and, wore 66, I wonder if that stain might still be there, at least with fans or media or ownership or whoever.
So that's where Eberle's contract comes more into play, in that there is the uncertainty about Josh Ho-Sang, who should already be an established NHLer by now, and Michael Del Col, who is on his way, but still you'd think by now he'd be at least a regular low-line NHLer. So Eberle at this at this deal still gives them room if those guys do get called up, but at the same time it's a contingency if they never pan out.
Well, the answer to the Josh Ho-Sang question is, of course, he's going to go to Chicago and explode.
Gotcha.
That's what all these possibly bust players, they always go to Chicago and explode.
I was going to say, yeah, it wasn't that long ago that Dylan Strome, sucked, right? And then he ended up being, I think, one of the highest scoring players in post All-Star break.
I did not see that coming. I fully admit I didn't. I was never a Dylan Strome fan, even when he got drafted, and I didn't see that coming.
No, I don't think anyone did. I mean, I was high on Dylan Strome, and I was way off that train by the time he got traded. I was like, well, I guess. And then, of course, you put him back with DeBrincat, who was supposed to be the result of Dylan Strome, who's been just fine on his own. Yeah. So
you can pat yourself on the back for that one, Ian. You did call it.
Okay. Jeff Skinner resigns 8 times 9. Dear God, what the hell?
Hey, you know what? You score 40 goals once, right?
You gotta keep those fans in Buffalo happy. Like, that to me is just a fan service deal, because we've never been very high on Jeff Skinner on this show. No. And he had an amazing year, and I think he could make that contract work, but at the same time, boy, he's going to have some lofty expectations there.
This is Christian Ehrhoff all over again for me.
Wow.
That's how bad, in my opinion, this deal is. This deal, I think, look at, yes, 40 goals, and if he can keep it up, great. And he's got this, there's obviously the cast there that should be able to keep him up in goals, but man, if one season, I mean, this guy had a great Calder, season, fell off the map, and then kind of resurrected in Buffalo. But man, $9 million, I understand fan service a little bit, but at the same time, you know what would probably make Buffalo fans more happy? And it goes back to this whole, when you give out too much of the cap indiscriminately to players, making the fucking playoffs. I think playoff hockey might make Buffalo fans a little more happy, and I think they significantly hurt themselves there, because now that's less money that they can build around, and they've got some good talent on this team. Look at Buffalo's gonna figure this out eventually. They have to.
You'd think,
but they may just end up being Oilers East, and that hurts me to say. But this is a team that should be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Period.
I think if you're, I'm sorry, Kevin. I think if you're Buffalo, though, to your point, Ian, I think you have to do this deal, because
absolutely
it's been too, well, that, I mean, granted, they traded nothing for him.
they got nothing.
But you have to do this deal, because like you said, Ian, you want to make the playoffs, and if you lose your best goal scorer probably since Thomas Vanek, then you're not really doing your fans or the sponsors or anybody really any favors. And I think $9 million is a big ticket, especially because he hit 40. It's not like he hit 46, or right. 45, but he scratched and clawed to get to 40. But I think if you keep he used to figure skate, and he's very conditioning wise and physically, I think he's in very good shape, and I don't think the skating is something that's going to go away. I think the big thing, keep him with Eichel, let him do his thing. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see 40 become a regular, but it's got to happen now.
It has to. I mean, it's too much for too long. In my opinion, I understand that, again, This is a team like this. This is where, I can understand, like, if the Sharks were in this situation, kind of circling back to what I said earlier, if the Sharks were in the situation where they hadn't made the playoffs in forever, and a guy breaks out and scores a bunch of goals, then sure, I understand you having to overpay for a player in this, so I can understand why Buffalo did it. I just think from a cap perspective, I think it's, once some of these guys start coming up, especially if they actualize the way you think they're going to do, like Erasmus Dahlin, for example, I mean, again, this is going to be another team that's going to be, super hard trying to find depth because too many of their top guys are making too much money.
Well, and it also means that Jack Eichel is only $1 million better than Jeff Skinner. Because Eichel's clocking in at 10, and Eichel's a stud, and we all love Jack Eichel. But and then you have Jeff Skinner, $1 million less, who, Skinner's a good goal scorer, but, he's not the captain of your team. He's not your first-line center, So,
well, what I was going to say, since you mentioned Jack Eichel, is that this trade or this re-signing probably helps keep Jack Eichel happy in Buffalo, because if you let Jeff Skinner walk for nothing, I mean, Jack Eichel has already voiced frustrations a couple of different times in the past.
That's true.
And at this point,
well, you got Dan Bilesma fired allegedly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he got Phil Housley fired too. So
that's a really good point too. I mean, obviously you do have to keep the guys that are there happy as well. And again, I think when you're in a situation like this where you haven't had success, this is where I feel like it's, I don't have to like the deal, but I can understand the logic behind the overpay. Whereas, in our situation, kind of just tying a bow on everything, I don't think we should have to, period.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the frustrating thing. Minor trade, minor trade in my opinion. The Pens trading Olli Maatta to Chicago for prospect, I can't remember his first name, Con, and a 5th-round pick. I mean, obviously a big...
Dominic Cahoon.
Dominic Cahoon and a 5th-round pick. Obviously a big salary dump for the Penguins. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the Penguins are doing. I think that's another we'll see team like Philly. It's some interesting stuff happening in Pittsburgh.
Well, I was going to say, especially too during the regular season, the Penguins had flashes where they looked like they might roll through at least the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. I mean, Matt Murray was hot, Sidney Crosby was hot, and then it all kind of fell off the rails. But yeah, it's cap dump with Pittsburgh, excuse me, and they're very clearly up to something, and it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out, because I still think that can be a competitive team. But obviously with Olli Maatta, drafted in the first round, back in 2012, obviously hasn't become the defenseman that really his draft position or his contract demanded. But like we were talking about with Dylan Strome and with potentially Josh Hosang. He's going to the land of the resurgence, right? And who knows? You get him. I mean, all of from zero to hero, that Blackhawks decor is gone, because all of a sudden there's really some interesting pieces there. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Maatta sort of figure it out. He's in that central time zone, so he's kind of he's within the same distance of most of the teams. There's not a whole lot of travel. He might be able to get a good groove and obviously play more minutes, because I feel like it seemed like every year at the deadline, his replacement was being traded for, but he was still there. And, now, I mean, he's obviously their 3rd highest paid defenseman. So you would theoretically think he's going to be on one of their top 2 pairs. So we'll see, but I think this could be, I actually think Olli Maatta might be able to make something happen here in Chicago, given that he's going to have a lot more minutes to play.
I think, Chicago wouldn't surprise me to see. I mean, Chicago still has their issues. Obviously, they need Corey Crawford healthy, but I think Chicago might surprise a lot of teams next year and start really, maybe not moving back into contention, but I don't think they will be as bad as they were this year.
Agreed.
Especially the second half of the season. This season, really, I think there's reason to believe they will trend up.
Yeah.
So
they should start trending up. I think there's definite problems that we could definitely discuss later that are still going to affect this team going forward. But yeah, they're going to be they're going to trend up for sure. Let's finish on this. We're going to steal we're gonna steal Eric's jersey jargon for a moment, and what are I'm waiting. My lawyers are ready, Eric, so you can just send your lawyers my way. So that's jersey jargon. The Canucks released their 50th anniversary sweaters. Thoughts, quick, Kevin.
I honestly had no thoughts. My only thought was that on their main jerseys, they finally got rid of the title Vancouver, which I thought they were going to do 9 years ago or 8 years ago or whenever the heck it was. I thought that was supposed to be a 1-year thing, and here we are 2019, and now they're finally getting rid of Vancouver. We know who you are, Vancouver. Like, come on. No, that was really my only thought to it.
We'll see points are a poor man's 14 points. You know what? I'm going to rack up 50 points then.
You know what? We'll see about that.
For me, I like the home jersey. I like that the shoulder patches are white. It's a good contrast with the whatever shade of blue that is. I'm the opposite. I don't like that they got rid of Vancouver because now the front of their sweater does not look filled out to me. It just looks weird with the Canuck there. But I can be won over. Their white jersey, who cares? White. I'm not a fan of white jerseys. The stick jersey, honestly, I think it's dumb. The hip stripes are weird. The logo's weird. Who wears an alternate jersey that's the same color as their home jersey? Vancouver, clearly. Now, the skate jersey. Let me go grab my wallet because that thing is tight. I want to buy one, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I like that they brought back the black skate sweater. Because I like old stuff like that, and I'm really glad they brought that back over like the silly V design nonsense. Like I would much rather see the black skate. I'm with like the home and away sweaters. I'm fine with. I think they're okay. Their alternate stick logo does nothing for me. I like that I like the stupid C logo with the orca. I don't know. I've always kind of liked that logo. I don't know why. Probably because I have no taste. I've always kind of liked that logo. As far as like Vancouver's logos have gone, I've always kind of liked that one. Kind of takes you back to like the Naslund Linden days, and I can't really go wrong there. Before I hated Vancouver. Absolutely. I think that's it. I think really we've covered a lot and we've said a lot and we've probably made people angry. Thanks for everyone who stuck with us all this time. Obviously a long show. So definitely thanks for sticking with us. If you want to see more, obviously, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please, if you need to go for a really, really, really long walk, get the audio feed. We'll definitely tire you out if you need to go walk the dog. You and your dog will not need to walk for a week. But other than that, yeah, I mean, thanks for sticking with us. It felt really good to be back on. Looking forward to discussing the draft, discussing free agency, and then beyond that, we'll probably be a little more intermittent unless something big happens for the Sharks. But
hopefully the Sharks won't get Corey Perry.
Right? Yes. Let's. They can't afford Corey Perry. Come on.
Well, I mean, we'll see because. They clearly want to bring everybody back, so
bring the whole party in, man. Everyone can make $7 million. We'll have me and Kevin and Jerk will lace up skates for $5, even though that's below the league minimum, and play some games.
Which is rise. Oh, that's another thing. League minimum's rising to $700,000 this season.
There you go, guys. Maybe we can make some.
Now is your chance, because when the Sharks have 3 lines of $7 million players across the board, you will be required to play 4th line center. So get your skates sharpened and get some fruit and crap and get ready for that 2023 take the phone number off the flyer invite, because it's going to happen.
All right. Kevin, I'll start with you. Final thoughts.
I'll go to Hockey Jerk first.
Hey, Jerk.
Oh, man. On the spot. All right. Final thoughts. Well, I'm glad to be back. This was my first podcast in almost a month and a half. So glad to be back. Glad to talk with you guys. Obviously, you guys are great friends to me. I love talking with you guys, and it's all fantastic. I don't really have some long-winded exciting, fantastic thing to say. So I'll just say this because we're coming up to the draft and July 1 and, buyouts and all that great stuff. So a man who's no longer on Twitter for some reason, I'm not sure why, he once tweeted me and he said, people's understanding of cap space does not rise at the same rate as cap space. And I think that's a pretty fascinating quote. So I'll leave you all with that.
All right. So I'm at Kevin Lacey 22 on most social medias. I'm glad that yours was not long-winded because mine will be, and that's why I wanted to go second here, even though the show is already really long. But I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who have supported us over the last few years. Don't worry, this is not a thank you like we're leaving or I'm leaving or anything like that. I just really want to acknowledge a lot of people that have been in the chat or hit us up on Twitter over the years. And if your name isn't mentioned, it's not intended to be a slight on you. I just speak up more in the chat, I guess. But anyway, first off, I do want to, of course, thank the late Mike Nevis. We very much miss you. And a few of your tweets have been popping up in my memories lately. So, we really miss you, Mike. But of course, all of you in the chat, Laurel, Sleeping Mofo, Jesse Clark, Four Paws, Steve Cropper, Jerry, Cheryl, Christine, Vince G, Dave B. Pilot. By the way, this is going to get like an awards show, so please don't play the music to pull me off here. Jessica Gata, A012345, M. Hackle, Morocco, Rob Iman, Nick Neff Tippett, Skylar, Race Fan Rocks, Al Martinet, Eric Cura, Christian Ruiz, Annie Yoder, Keegan McNally, Kuda Phil and Tony, Richard, Brian, Philip Haldeman, The Great Don Holio, Vegas Hockey Podcast, Beard Guy 661, and Bomb Squad 455R. I also want to thank new members tonight, Mike Leiden and Anthony Sanchez. Thanks for being a part of it. And there's, of course, the people on Twitter who watch us but don't really chime in, like Andy Kelly, Ryan Deegan, Rick Franklin, Timu, Leonard, Craig Lum, Lisa Davenport, Sarah Kutcher, Alicia Morris, Jeff Fredericks, Megan Ray, Alyssa Green, Leanne Dillon, Marianne, I told you this was long, Steve, Kurt, Moz Morris, Mike Powell, Questa Kid, Matthew Ibarra, Matt Webdev, Z, Diner Blum, Ramon, and the friends who have come up to me over the years at the games and introduced yourselves. And then, of course, the parents of the players who follow me on Twitter. I got to throw it out there. Anita Carlson, Cindy and Phil DeSimone, Jamie Hobgowax, Kathy Brodzinski, and Eves Bebo. Thank you so much for your support. So that is my super long-winded final thoughts. Thanks, guys.
Wow. I don't even know how to top that. You can find me at Ian Blogs Hockey. As hockey news kind of heats up, I'm sure I'll be chiming in on the Twitter machine as things heat up. I'm also, I'll be around. I mean, I'm not going to be a stranger by any means. So if you want to hit me up on Twitter, that's where you want to do it. I love talking hockey. So if you have some question that maybe we did not get to because the podcast was 2 hours, throw it at me there. Other than that, echoing what Kevin said, obviously appreciation for everyone who makes this worth doing, because without you guys, I don't know if I'd want to just talk into a mic for myself. So, I mean, obviously, the support that we've gotten has been unreal. And I appreciate each and every one of you that take your time out of your day to make Teal Tinted Glasses a podcast that you listen to. Other than that, guys, we'll figure out what we're doing next with the draft and free agency. And once we have all the details for that nailed down, that we will be tweeting it out and we'll let you know. And peace out, Lake Trout. Have a good day.